Hey guys, Pastor Tim here. Hope you're ready for another video from our youth group at Lighthouse Baptist Church. If this is your first time watching the video or you're trying to catch up on a missed lesson, we hope that this video is a blessing to you and helps you grow in your relationship with Jesus Christ.
Amen. All right, so gender part 3. Let's do a little recap. So I feel like there's been so many breaks in this series because all the different things going on. But just kind of overall for the series, who am I? We're talking about what I refer to as the gender theory, the identity theory of life. All right, it's this whole thing where everyone's talking about what they identify as, and they put the certain things in their social media bios and stuff like that. And usually people think of gender when you mention this, but it could be a number of things. But what we're really trying to do with this series is speak on the importance of, yes, the world is saying this is what's important when it comes to identity, which is all about, looking into yourself. And we talk about what the Bible says about that and how we should build our identity through God's word and who God says we are as well. And so part of that we finally got to is gender. We talked about like different puzzle pieces. We talked about the fact that we're eternal, meaning God had created mankind as the only piece of creation that has an eternal aspect to themselves, okay? Yes, sorry, when your pets die and stuff, they don't go to heaven. They don't have a soul. Man does because God created them with that eternal aspect. Okay, we talked the fact that we were created from dust, meaning that we're created and we have a creator. So we are ultimately responsible to someone. And so another piece of that is gender. God created two genders, and there are specific virtues that are predominant to each one of those genders. And even in the Bible, you see specific roles to those genders as well. But we definitely see an attack on that from our society at large, a society that is apart from God. So 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago actually, we covered what is a man. And we weren't answering it like you hear in debates of like, what is a man, and the biological answer, the XY chromosomes and stuff like that. But we were talking about what virtues does God attach to masculinity that are predominant towards men, that this is something a man should exhibit in their lives. And you girls, if you remember, I kind of did the whole thing, hey, a note to the ladies, don't look, if a guy isn't like this, drop him, don't worry about that guy anymore. Does anybody remember what the two virtues for the man were, Drake? Responsibility was one. What's the opposite of not responsible? So it was work and responsibility. A man is supposed to be industrious. All right, they should have goals. They should seek to accomplish things. All right, and they are to be responsible. God gave Adam the dominion over the garden. He gives man as the head of the house and so forth, as Christ is the head of the church. Now remember, these virtues, does that mean because the being industrious or a hard worker or being responsible is predominantly a masculine virtue? Does that mean ladies can't exhibit that? Does that mean like ladies can be like, oh, I can be as lazy as I want now? No, of course not. But when God created man at the beginning of the Bible, he specifically gave these virtues towards that gender for a reason. Doesn't mean man can't do that or women can't do that, but a man definitely should. Okay? And so what we're going to talk about today, which is really one virtue when it comes to a woman that God gave, doesn't mean a man can't do that, but is a virtue that is predominantly given to women and their femininity. All right? So forgive me when I say that word. I'm going to mess it up multiple times as we get into this lesson. So let's talk about the virtues of femininity, the first point here. And when God created, let me ask you guys this. When God created Adam and he noticed that, hey, it's not good that man is alone, what did he say that he specifically needed? No, not exactly. A helper. All right, and that is the virtue of a woman, is to be a helper, okay? And we'll get into that a little bit. And in the following chapter, she is described as a mother. Okay, I wouldn't say that's necessarily a virtue, but that's obviously a very predominant role that obviously only women can perform. But the word helper, or this virtue, it means to succor, not succor, okay? Succor, which means to render strength, enablement, support, and aid. All right, that's what it means to be a helper. to come alongside, to give strength to enable, to support someone, to aid someone in a cause, an endeavor, anything like that. It's you could look at it even as like an alliance of sorts. All right, so in a world where power and self-advancement are highly coveted, this can seem demeaning. All right, there are many out there. If I was simply to say that the virtue that is predominantly God has placed on women is that of helper, there are many people who would see that right off the bat as a very demeaning or negative thing. Like that means women are inferior and so forth. Okay, but consider this. God is often described as this trait, as this virtue. God, Christ, is often described in the Bible many times as a helper. Okay, who's the one that gives us strength and grace? God. Who enables us to be able to perform certain things? It's God. Support, aid. God is our great helper. Okay, so obviously he clearly does not agree with what a society apart from God would say about this type of virtue. It's not a demeaning thing. It's not an inferior thing. Guys, is God inferior to us because he helps us? Because he renders aid to us? No, and the woman, the female, is not inferior as well, okay? Many times you're going to hear me talk about this in the context of a marriage, okay? And I'll address those that aren't married as well, all right? But that does not in any way mean that the wife is inferior to the husband, okay? So don't take that. All because the husband is given the responsibility to be the head of the family does not in any way mean that he is then superior to the wife. Okay, that's a responsibility. That's not like his rank or something like that. But yes, this does spill into motherhood as well, because what does a mom do for her children? Oh, everything. Yeah, that's kind of true. But yeah, it gives strength, enable it, support. All right, that's what a good mother does. So this virtue obviously goes into that. And Eve, when she was created, she was not only a helper, but she was also the mother of all living. So remember, the whole goal in this is when we start from the beginning, okay, we see God's very good ideals, okay? Here's a profound statement. Only women are mothers, okay? And that may sound a little silly, but it has to be said because there are many people who will argue that point because of the whole gender ideologies and identity ideologies that are out there and saying, well, if a man, or not, I'm sorry, because biologically that's still not true. They say if a woman decides to identify as a man and can get pregnant, well, that means a man got pregnant. And some of you have this weird look. Guys, that is debated all the time. And it's all about definitions and semantics, and it's not about truth and biology. So I'll say it again. Only women are mothers. Okay, so that is that. And it's a good and beautiful thing indeed. And it's a commission from God for which he is designed not only biologically, but spiritually with this virtue in mind, to be a helper. Now, when God called the woman a helper, he told her something about her femininity, all right? Namely that women tend to have special abilities in the interpersonal realm. Okay, how many guys have ever heard the phrase, a woman's intuition? All right, that has a basis, very much a basis in reality. All right, you can ask Miss Christine all sorts of things, but we'll just keep it at. So let me ask you this. You've heard a women's intuition. Have you ever heard like, hey, men are dense? Yes. All right, that's very true. Men on a broad scale, this is just generalization, but men on a broad scale, they tend to be just very straight focused. They have like blinders on, so to speak. They're like, oh, I need to accomplish this. I need to do that. It's that whole, if you guys ever heard the whole spaghetti and meatballs argument and stuff like that. Women are better at multitasking. Men are very goal-oriented. They're very surface facts like, yes, true, 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 and that's it. But women are far more interested in matters of relationship and personality. Funny cases are like when I tell Miss Christine, like, oh yeah, hey, so-and-so is in the hospital. She bombards me with all sorts of questions. Well, why? I don't know, just so-and-so's in the hospital. Well, what's wrong with them? They're in the hospital. Well, what, all this, and like she wants to know all the things. Because women are they're just, in general, that's kind of how God wired women. They're better at the interpersonal things, the personality things, the relationship things. All right, they can anticipate needs and meet them. Okay, your mom is probably far better at that than your dad is. okay? And she's probably far more patient with you than your dad is, all right? They can anticipate needs and meet them. They can discern deficiencies and intercede for them. Like, hey, I noticed someone's struggling there. I noticed my child's struggling with this. I'm going to come alongside and help them. Dad, he might be too busy looking at the game or something like that. They can see anxieties and they know how to comfort them, all right? Men have a hard time with that. They can see if somebody's going through a hard time and they're just like, yeah, you know. I'm not trying to be too funny, and yes, like I said, these are generalizations. Not saying one's wrong or the other, but that's how God wired us, all right? Men, they have certain things that they are going to be predominantly more efficient at than women are. Women are going to have things they're going to be more predominantly efficient at than men are, and that's normal. That's fine. That doesn't mean one's inferior to the other. That doesn't mean one's superior to the other. It's a good thing to exemplify in your life, all right? So, ladies, your predominant virtue that God has given you is that of being a helper, rendering care, rendering support in the future, hopefully to your husband, but you can do that in many different ways even today in your life. Guys, that does not mean you shouldn't give a lick about helping people or being a helper. No, you can still exhibit that virtue, but understand it's going to come a lot easier for the ladies than it is for you guys. Now, this is very countercultural. That's our next point. It's hard to ignore the fact here that this virtue is given great value, all right, but our world does not value it as much, all right, especially with the feminist movement that is out there. Our world today, it values grasping power, not giving of power, all right? Hey, be in control. Take control of your life. It values being strong, not giving of strength, not giving your strength to another. Hey, strengthening yourself, being strong, independent. Not that those are bad things, but there is something to be said of being a helper as well. The world is all about self-exaltation, putting yourself forward, promoting yourself, not giving of self to another. Okay? All right, a wife is to submit, to support the husband. Does that mean the husband never supports his wife? No, it doesn't. All right, remember, these virtues can still be exhibited in men as well. Trust me, guys, if your marriage is going to be healthy, you're going to be giving of yourself a lot of times to your wife as well. All right? And let me see here. So none of these things normally bring a woman a worldly notoriety. All right, it's not going to bring, if just strictly focusing on being a helper, this isn't something that's going to promote a woman or bring them any sort of fame or exaltation. This work is often humble, quiet, unseen, and unrecognized, and selfless. Okay, let me give you a easy example of this. You may think, well, what does that have to do with help? But let me just say, all right, so obviously being a helper is given a lot towards being a mother, right? And it's been brought to my attention, all right, guys, when you know, if the Lord blesses and scares us all, you become a father one day. All right, guys, if you become a dad one day, be sure to take pictures of your wife with the baby. All right, because guess what's going to happen all the time? The mom's always going to take pictures of the baby. The mom and they're like, oh, hold the baby like this and do this. So guess who's always in the photos with the baby? Dad, not mom. All right, but who's the one that's always caring for the baby? And how does that show? Who's always behind the camera, so to speak? It's the mom. All right, so guys, take photos of your mom, of the wife with the baby. And that's like just a little silly example, but yeah, being a helper, it's not a upfront in the limelight thing. No, it's very much humble, quiet, unseen, unrecognized, selfless, but it's a very important role. When I used to work at the camp, my good friend Mike Graham, who's now like one of the operating managers there at the camp, he always had a saying where he said, hey, someone has to cut the grass. No one pays attention to the person who cuts the grass that much, the lawn keeper and stuff like that, but someone has to do it, because guess what people are going to notice when the grass isn't cut? They're going to notice, hey, why does the camp look so ugly, or why does it look so unkempt and stuff? It's an important thing. If it's not done, it's going to be noticed. All right, guys, and if your mom's decided to drop the ball and to be like, you know what, I don't really care about helping the family out right now, guess what? It's going to be noticed, okay? So, yeah, it's not a significant thing. It can be very countercultural, but it's an important virtue. but it is also a risky thing. Why would it be a risky thing for someone to render so much support and help to someone else, like their husband or their kids? How can that be a risky thing?
Because it can take away from, like, themselves.
Yeah, that's true. That is true in a way. You want to make time for yourself. But think about this. When you commit to people like this, you could get burned, meaning it's not always reciprocated. And that's that's an important thing to understand is, guys, you shouldn't serve to be reciprocated, number one, all right? You serve out of humility. It's a selfless thing. But it does hurt when it's not reciprocated. Guys, tell your mom you love them. Ladies, tell your mom you love them, okay? Thank them for the little things that they probably do all the time that you take for granted. Yeah, it may not be reciprocated at time, and sometimes you get burned because you invest, and this is obviously a future thing, hopefully not in your guys' future, but I see it a lot of times in ministry. A good godly mother invests in her family, and her children grow up, and they stray away from the Lord. They forsake God. They kind of forsake the family in some ways, and they start living a life that obviously their mom did not raise them to do. All right? It hurts. They can get burned because they gave of themselves so much. All right? I guarantee they don't regret giving themselves. They love their child and so forth. But yeah, there is some risk involved as well, but that shouldn't deter from doing what you know is your God-given responsibility. Let's look at some biblical significance here. All right, some biblical things. There are a couple dark ages in the Bible's history. All right, one is the day of the judges. Okay, during that time, they referred to something as the cycle of judges, where the children of Israel would be living in the promised land. They would sin, and God would allow them to go under the oppression of a foreign tribe or nation. They would live under that oppression and cry out to God for help. God would send them a judge, hence the name, judges, who would deliver them from that nation, and then they're serving God again. But then the cycle continues. Sin, oppression, slavery, blah, 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 judge, and it continues on. It was a very tumultuous time during their history. Another dark time was obviously when they were slaves in Egypt. Okay? And then another dark time in the Bible's history was the 400 years of silence from the Old Testament to the New Testament. All right? Note there's 400-year gap in there, guys. All right? All those dark periods ended because of a mother. Okay? For the judges, it was Hannah. Hannah is the mother of who? Samuel. The prophet Samuel. She prayed. She couldn't have her own son. She was barren. She prayed to God for a son. He gave her Samuel. Samuel became the last judge and the first prophet and ended that time of the judges where Israel had a king and a kingdom, and they had a stable nation for a couple of generations there. Okay? What mother helped end the slavery in Egypt? Anybody know? Jochebed. Jochebed is the mother of Moses. What did she do? She hid Moses from Pharaoh's guards who were seeking to kill all the little boys that were born in Egypt at that time, if you recall. Put them in a basket, sent them down the Nile River. Instead of just letting happen what was supposed to happen, she took action, hid her son, and her son ended up growing up to be the deliverer of her people. And then to end that 400 years of silence between the Old Testament and New Testament, God sent an angel to speak to Mary, who obviously was the mother of Jesus, and that ended that, and that brought the gospel into the world. God has endorsed motherhood time and time again. In fact, the first endorsement of motherhood in Scripture it comes in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, when God tells Satan that he will bruise his heel, but it's the seed of woman that will crush the serpent's head. All right, and the seed of woman he's referring to is Jesus Christ. And a lot of people, they call this the fancy word is the proto-evangelium. It just means the first mention of the gospel, that Christ was to come and defeat death and hell, defeat Satan. Okay, but Christ was going to come through a mother. All right, so one of the greatest endorsements God ever placed was that motherhood at the very center of his grand plan of salvation. All right, so since that time, Satan, he did all sorts of things to try and to ensure the death of the children that mothers had. In the time of Egypt, he convinced Pharaoh most likely to hey, enact that plan to kill all the Hebrew boys. When Christ came on the scene, Herod tried to kill all the boys as well. See, not every child obviously is Jesus. Okay, I'm looking at you guys. I know that for a fact. Okay. All right, not every child is Jesus, but every child can be Satan's next powerful enemy. Okay, standing against wickedness and promoting salvation in a new generation. All right, so let's just end here with our last point. I won't switch because I see a bunch of you writing still. Sorry, I slow on my slides. Some of you guys just need to write quicker, all right? Girls, don't worry about making it look all, legible.
Readable if I don't make it look good.
Don't worry about making it look all legible. I mean, look at Locke's notes, he can read it. Let me see your notes, Locke. That's not the worst. Let me see here. Chris, no, okay, I'm not going to pick on you guys. All right, so. All right, last point, the battle today. All right, there are many things that are happening in the world today that attack women and motherhood specifically. All right, there are things like acts of terrorism that happen around the world. Not so much in America, obviously, but guys, there are many parts of the world that have different types of laws and very much see and place women as inferior to men. All right, and it does have effects on femininity and on motherhood as well. So there's acts of terrorism, specifically when Hamas started attacking Israel a couple of years ago. There were women and children being beheaded in the streets and stuff like that. In America, there's domestic violence. Okay, that's an attack on motherhood and womanhood today as well in many ways. And of course, we know about abortion as well. But there are many ideologies today that disconnect women from motherhood. Okay, let me just get into it. I want to ask, but in many messages that are promoted out there in society that disconnect women from motherhood, it is considered a form of oppression. Like, oh, you can't be a mother because then, like, oh, your life just stops. Okay, like, oh, it's like the most. Girls, you can ask Miss Christine if she feels oppressed or anything at this moment. But they try to characterize as becoming a mother as a very oppressive thing. Oh, now you gotta deal with this kid. Okay, it is considered or a means by which a woman is deprived of her true empowerment. All right, you'll never be able to fulfill your greatest self if you allow yourself to become a mother, because it's going to derail all of that. As if being a mother is not part of fulfilling your greatest calling. No, that can't be. That's a depriving you of that. Or it's too great a sacrifice or an inferior choice compared to work, like a career or some other pursuit. All right? Going to get a little personal with you here. All right? I'm sure Miss Christine doesn't mind me mentioning this. All right? But for those of you that are not aware, okay, Miss Christine is technically Dr. Christine. All right? She went to school for many years. No, I'm kidding. She went to school, did a lot of work to get her doctorate in nursing and to become a nurse practitioner, guys, which takes a lot of work to do. And so she put a lot of work into that to become Dr. Christine and to have the job that she has and do the things that she does, okay? And she would probably be the first one to tell you at this point in her life that she never would have thought that she would be like, you know what? I want to spend more time at home with my son. All right? She's personally looking like, hey, I want to go part-time, not full-time, because I want to be there and just raise my son, experience all those baby years and so forth. It's not an oppressive thing. It's not depriving or anything like that. And I can definitely say for Miss Christine's case, all right, I don't think she believes that it's something that is inferior to her career. If she feels such a way about her career in light of our son, I can say that for certain. Now, yes, we have to consider, well, what about women who never become wives or mothers? You hear me talking about a lot about wives, a lot about mothers. Okay, and yes, I am not in some like make-believe world where I think that anyone there's plenty of fish in the sea, there's someone for everyone, stuff like that. No, we just understand that may not be your lot in life. They may not be what God has for you. The Apostle Paul, we all know very well, he never was married and stuff like that, but he accomplished a lot of great things for the Lord. Now, what about women who are never become mothers or who are never married for whatever reasons? What can they do? Well, they can do almost anything, all right? As long as you do not forsake that prominent virtue that God has given to womanhood, and that is to be a helper, okay? Obviously, it's not to your husband, it's not to your children, but there are many avenues in which you can still minister unto others, be a helper unto others in various walks of life. I can't give you specifics because you're going to find all sorts of different ways that could be, but just kind of don't lose sight of that virtue. All right, yes, you can get into your career, you want to get your, be advanced in that, but never forget, you know what, I still want to be a helper unto others. Okay? Don't forsake that intuition you have. When you see a need, take the lead, help someone, comfort someone. Don't forsake that virtue.